I didn't come here to welcome you back. I came to say goodbye.
My wife Sarah once told me, "You don't need to know what happens on girls' trips," then blocked me on everything and flew to Miami for 5 days with her friends. No updates, no calls, no contact. When she finally returned, expecting to see me waiting for her at the arrivals gate with flowers and a smile, she found someone else standing there, someone she hadn't seen in years, the version of me she thought she'd buried. They say trust is like glass. Once it's shattered, no matter how carefully you try to glue it back together, the cracks remain. But they don't tell you that sometimes, when the glass breaks, it becomes a tool. After 15 years as a private investigator, I've seen trust corrode like rust on steel. I've watched marriages implode in grainy footage, lovers sneaking out of hotels, late-night rendezvous behind gas stations, spouses whispering lies into burner phones. I've seen so much betrayal, so many people fool themselves into thinking their secrets were safe. But I never thought my marriage would be one of those cases. Not until it stared me down from across my own kitchen table. Sarah was supposed to be my exception. The one pure thing untouched by the filth I saw through telephoto lenses and cracked apartment blinds. In my cynical world, she was my peace. Our house wasn't much. A modest 2-bedroom in a sleepy cul-de-sac I'd paid for in cash after cracking a multi-million-dollar fraud case. But it was safe, predictable, ours. We had a front porch with creaky steps and a backyard with a stubborn maple tree that refused to grow straight, the kind of place where people wave to each other just for existing. And she used to love it. Or at least, I thought she did. Sarah would tease me about my habits, the way I always sat with my back to the wall in restaurants, how I'd glance at every exit before we even opened our menus. "Relax, sweetheart," she'd say with a laugh that used to feel like home. "You're not on the job now. You can breathe around me." And I believed her. God help me, I believed her. I should have paid more attention to the signs, the micro-expressions, the subtle shifts in language, the way she started rolling her eyes whenever I locked up the house at night. But love makes you lazy, or maybe just blind. Her friends hated me from day one. They never said it directly, at least not when she was around. But their tone told the whole story. Jessica Martinez was the ringleader, a loud, impulsive 2-time divorcee who saw marriage as a challenge to outgrow. She had the grace of a wrecking ball and the conscience of a poker dealer. Amy Chen was her loyal shadow, quiet, dull, and desperately trying to keep up. Then there was Lisa Rodriguez, the observant one, the one who rarely spoke but watched everything like she was building a case of her own. To them, I was the boring husband, the safe choice, the man who paid bills on time and ruined dinner parties with crime scene stories. "Don't you want passion?" Jessica once muttered just loud enough for me to hear. "Not whatever this is." I was this. Then, out of nowhere, Sarah dropped the bomb like it was an afterthought. We were sitting on the couch, eating pad thai out of takeout boxes when she said, "Oh, by the way, I'm going to Miami with the girls next week." Just like that. No discussion, no invitation, no warning. "Miami?" I asked. My tone was too measured to be natural. "Yeah," she said, sipping her wine. "Jessica found this insane hotel deal, ocean view, rooftop bar. We just need a break from all the mundane stuff, you know?" Mundane. That word again. She'd used it a lot lately. About our neighborhood, our love life, our Saturday routines. About me. I told myself to be supportive. Bought her sunblock. Charged her new Kindle. Even washed the designer swimsuits I'd never seen before. Bold cuts and bright colors that screamed, "Look at me." But I swallowed every red flag like a fool, convincing myself that love meant trust. The morning of her departure, I drove her to the airport, carried her luggage, made polite small talk while my stomach churned acid. At the gate, I leaned in for a kiss goodbye, but she pressed her palm against my chest, holding me back like a stranger getting too close. "You know what, honey?" she said, her eyes flat. "You don't need to know what happens on girls' trips. That's why you're blocked until I'm home." Then she turned on her heel and walked away. Blocked. Not, "I'll text you when we land." Not, "Love you, talk soon." Just silence. Like I was a liability. Like I was someone to be contained. I stood there, surrounded by airport chatter and the low hum of goodbye tears and rolling suitcases, and something inside me snapped back into place. Not broke, not yet, but recalibrated. The man she left standing there wasn't the husband she'd blocked. He was someone older, colder, sharper. The version of me I used to be before I met her. The man who knew that everyone lies eventually. The investigator I'd locked in the basement of my soul to make space for love. He had just been handed a reason to come upstairs. 5 days of absolute radio silence. Not a text, not a call, not even a fake Instagram story to pretend everything was normal. Just a black screen and an even blacker hole where trust used to live. 5 days of being treated like a liability, like a parasite dragging down her glamorous reinvention. 5 days to relive every ignored warning sign that I dismissed because I needed to believe in something unspoiled, something untouched by the rot I deal with daily. You'd think I'd be used to betrayal. It's my job. But when the blade finally comes from the person you built your whole entire life around, it doesn't just cut, it severs something deep and ancient. Sarah wanted to play games? Fine, but she forgot one thing. I don't play games. I finish them. She forgot what I do for a living. She forgot that while she was off sipping cocktails and chasing sunsets with her little entourage of enablers, I was trained to follow shadows, listen between words, and strip people down to their most hidden truths. She thought she was stepping out on a boring husband. What she actually did was hand a professional investigator a case file with her name on it and say, "Here, ruin me." And the irony, it's Rich. She'd spent years accusing me of being too suspicious, too guarded. "You don't know how to let go," she'd whine whenever I double-checked hotel locks or took the long way home. "You always expect the worst in people." Turns out I hadn't expected nearly enough. See, there's a key difference between the amateurs and the pros in my line of work. Amateurs react. They break down, they yell, they storm into rooms with trembling hands and demand confessions like they're in a soap opera. But professionals, we respond, coldly, methodically, 3 steps ahead while everyone else is dancing on square one. So when Sarah hit me with that, "You're blocked until I'm back" monologue at the airport, I didn't chase her down like some pathetic rom-com extra in a button-down. I didn't grab her suitcase or raise my voice or cry in long-term parking. No, I smiled, told her to have a great trip, wished her sunshine, then turned and walked away like the loving, understanding husband she thought she'd neutralized. But as soon as I pulled out of that parking garage, something uncoiled inside me, something ancient and precise, like a predator waking from hibernation. The man who drove home wasn't the one who dropped her off. That man died somewhere between Terminal B and the pay station. The one gripping the wheel on the way back? He wasn't interested in peace anymore. Here's the truth. No one tells you about being a PI. It turns you into a different species. You stop seeing people as friends or lovers or coworkers. You start seeing them as patterns, habits, data sets with faces. You learn to recognize guilt in the twitch of a jaw, deceit in a 2-second hesitation, infidelity in the change of a scent. By the time I turned onto our street, my street, legally speaking, since only my name was on the deed, I wasn't heartbroken. I was activated. First stop inside, the liquor cabinet. 3 fingers of bourbon, not because I was spiraling, but because strategy requires clarity. And for me, bourbon is liquid focus. It trims the noise, sharpens the lines. It's not comfort, it's calibration. I sat at the same desk where I'd orchestrated stakeouts, cracked insurance fraud, traced burner phones across state lines. And now my newest subject, my wife. The woman who swore she was different from the rest. Time to test that theory. I started where I always do. Patterns, weak points, routines. Sarah had always been sloppy with tech, overshared, trusted autocorrect more than her own spelling. Perfect. She used the same 4 passwords for everything, and I'd cracked them all back in year 2 of our marriage. Not because I didn't trust her then, but because muscle memory never lies. Flight manifests, hotel confirmations, geotagged photos from friends who forgot to crop metadata, social media cross-referencing. If you think deleting a story makes it invisible, let me introduce you to cache recovery and account triangulation. It took less than an hour. The hotel Jessica had supposedly found a deal for, the Sunset Resort, Miami Beach. Not a cheap place, not even close. And guess what? They don't do discounts for women on teacher salaries or receptionist budgets, but they do cater to a very specific clientele. Men, rich ones. Men who book penthouse suites and expect a certain kind of discretion. Men who don't care about last names, but who know exactly what they're paying for when 4 women arrive in barely their outfits and 0 luggage logic. It wasn't a girl's trip, it was an arrangement. And just like that, the evidence began stacking up piece by piece, turning the woman I'd married into just another file in a cabinet full of liars. And I wasn't even angry. Not yet. I was focused. Focused in the way only a man with nothing left to lose can be. Flight information was more revealing. 4 tickets booked under different names but paid for by the same credit card belonging to Robert Mitchell, a very married, very wealthy investment banker with expensive tastes and younger women. But the real bombshell came from facial recognition software cross-referencing the hotel guest list. Marcus Torres. That name hit like a freight train loaded with karma. Sarah's ex-fiancé from 6 years ago, the one who'd supposedly broken her heart, whom she claimed had devastated her and destroyed her ability to trust. The one I'd spent our entire relationship helping her heal from. There it was, in digital black and white. My wife hadn't gone to Miami for girls' time. She'd gone back to the man she'd never gotten over, bankrolled by some rich idiot who thought he was buying companionship. Sarah wanted to disappear for 5 days, block me like some irrelevant inconvenience. Perfect. The best hunts always start when prey thinks it's safe. She'd given me 5 days to work with clear conscience, where she couldn't claim I was paranoid or controlling. 5 days where every discovery would be her fault for shutting me out. Here's the thing about cheaters. They think they're criminal masterminds when they're performing at drunk toddler intellectual levels. Sarah's crew was about as subtle as a marching band in a library. Day 1 of their Miami adventure, Amy was already blowing cover faster than a witness protection participant on reality TV. Amy's Instagram was like real-time confession for the world's stupidest criminals. The first post showed poolside with caption, "Miami vibes with my girls." Innocent enough until you noticed reflections in her designer sunglasses showing the pool bar menu, complete with hotel logo, location confirmed. But the masterpiece of stupidity came from Sarah herself. My beautiful, clever wife, who thought she was untraceable, had forgotten about automatic cloud backup on our shared family account. She'd blocked me from Instagram but never removed me from photo storage. It was like having direct feed to her infidelity, courtesy of Apple's customer service. And what a feat it was. Sarah laughing at blackjack tables with genuine happiness I hadn't seen in months. Except now she was laughing with someone else. Tall, dark-haired guy with his arm around her shoulders, whispering things that made her giggle like a teenager. Running facial analysis took 20 minutes. Marcus Torres, age 36, real estate developer with questionable business practices and reputation for cutting corners. Also Sarah's ex-fiancé, who'd supposedly devastated her 6 years ago when he chose career over their relationship. Apparently, devastation has expiration dates. The subsequent photos told the whole story. Marcus and Sarah at dinner holding hands, dancing at upscale clubs with her arms around his neck, walking beaches at sunset like tourism commercial for infidelity. The most telling was Sarah asleep in obviously Marcus's bed, wearing nothing but a sheet and satisfied smile. Timestamp showed 3 a.m., 6 hours after she'd sent me her "Miss You Honey" text. But it wasn't just cheating. It was elaborate deception, careful planning, building alternate reality where I was the boring husband she needed escaping from. She'd made me the villain in her story to justify playing victim deserving her fairy tale reunion. Sarah wanted to play games, treat our marriage like inconvenient obstacle to her happiness. Fine, but she'd forgotten one crucial detail. I'm really, really good at games, and I always play to win. You know what they say about revenge being a dish best served cold? But they never mention the preparation is where real fun happens. While Sarah played house with her ex in Miami, I was home cooking up a 5-course meal of consequences. Amateurs think revenge is dramatic confrontations and public humiliation at Applebee's. That's not revenge. That's amateur theater getting you restraining orders and crazy ex reputations. Real revenge is precision, understanding your target's ecosystem and systematically dismantling it piece by piece until they're wondering what the heck happened. First stop, Catherine Mitchell, innocent wife of our generous benefactor Robert. I compiled what I call the Catherine package. Flight records showing Robert's credit card paying for 4 women's Miami tickets, hotel reservations under his name for penthouse suite, security footage showing him checking in with Jessica as his designated contact, and photos of him with Jessica at intimate dinner the night before departure. Being a PI means developing relationships with people who understand information's value. Catherine's divorce attorney was someone I'd worked with before, a shark in Armani who collected cheating husbands like trophies. I sent her the package anonymously with notes suggesting she might want important conversation with her client about asset protection. Next was Marcus Torres. I'd kept tabs on Marcus over the years, partly from professional curiosity and partly because I never bought Sarah's tragic breakup story. His development company was involved in seriously questionable deals, zoning violations mysteriously overlooked, building permits sailing through processes usually taking months, city contracts tailor-made for his specifications. My journalist friend Kevin Park had been sniffing around Marcus's operations for months, looking for smoking tool to blow everything wide open. I gave him early Christmas present, detailed breakdown of Marcus's Miami trip, including company credit card paying for expenses timed perfectly to coincide with major zoning hearing he was supposed to attend in person. But the real masterpiece was planned for Marcus's personal life. While he rekindled romance with Sarah, he'd apparently forgotten to mention one detail to his current girlfriend. Rachel Kim was an elementary school teacher who thought Marcus was attending wellness retreat to focus on personal growth. She'd even packed healthy snacks and made him promise meditation selfies. I showed up at her school Wednesday afternoon during lunch break with manila envelope and carefully prepared speech. Rachel, I'm sorry to bother you, but I think there's something you need to know about Marcus. The conversation was one of the hardest things I'd ever done. Watching someone's face crumble as their reality gets rewritten in real time is never easy. Rachel went through all stages: denial, anger, bargaining. The whole grief cycle compressed into 20 minutes in empty classroom decorated with alphabet charts and motivational kindness posters. But elementary school teachers are tougher than they look. By the time I finished showing evidence, Rachel had moved past devastation straight into cold, calculating anger that only comes from realizing you've been played for a fool. "When does their flight land?" she asked. I told her. "And you said she's expecting you to pick her up." I nodded. Rachel smiled, the kind suggesting Marcus had seriously underestimated exactly who he was messing with. Maybe I should be the one to meet them instead. "I think that's brilliant," I said. "In fact, I think I can help make it really memorable." By Thursday night, all pieces were in place. Catherine's lawyer was preparing divorce papers that would freeze Robert's assets. Kevin had his exposé ready to publish the moment Marcus's plane touched down, and Rachel had very special welcome home surprise planned for her lying boyfriend. Sarah thought she was coming home to her boring, trusting husband, who'd been waiting for her to grace him with her presence again. Instead, she was flying straight into perfect storm of consequences. Friday afternoon, while Sarah's plane descended toward what she thought was triumphant return home, I was sitting in my living room, laptop open, watching live stream courtesy of Tony Chen, security consultant who owed me favor. Tony had positioned himself with perfect view of Arrivals Gate, streaming everything through encrypted connection. Sarah came through gate first, looking like she'd stepped off cover of Vacation Barbie magazine. Perfect tan, designer sundress, hair obviously benefiting from 5-star salon treatments Marcus had paid for. She was practically glowing with post-affair satisfaction. Behind her came supporting cast, Jessica strutting like she owned the place, Amy trailing with enough shopping bags to stock boutique, and Lisa bringing up rear, still oblivious to what awaited them. When Sarah pulled out her phone, I watched her frown at screen, probably wondering why I hadn't sent usual welcome home text. She'd unblocked me during flight, and my lack of jumping through hoops was clearly messing with her expectations. That's when Rachel made her move. Rachel stepped into Sarah's sight line, calm as Sunday morning, holding poster board like welcoming home war hero. Except instead of welcome home, it displayed blown-up photo from Sarah's own cloud backup, her and Marcus at blackjack table, his arm around her, both looking like they'd won lottery. Above photo in block letters, readable from space, Marcus sends his apologies. He's busy explaining this picture to me. Effect was immediate and devastating. Sarah stopped dead like hitting invisible wall. Color drained from her face so fast I thought she might pass out on terminal floor. "Sarah Hayes." Rachel's voice carried perfectly, sweet as pie and twice as sharp. "I'm Rachel Kim, Marcus's girlfriend." "Well, I was his girlfriend until about an hour ago when he decided to come clean about his little vacation." Crowd around them started taking notice. People slowing down, phones coming out, unmistakable buzz of public drama rippling through terminal. "Marcus already told me everything," Rachel continued, "about how you two have been planning this for months, about how he's been lying to me while helping you lie to your husband, about how you thought you were so clever, blocking your husband while you played house with your ex." When Jessica tried intervening, Rachel turned teacher stare on her. "My problem is I spent 3 years with man apparently still in love with someone else. My problem is while I was packing healthy snacks for his wellness retreat, he was planning to cheat on me with married woman." Funny thing is, Rachel turned back to Sarah, Marcus thought you were coming back to him, thought you were finally leaving your husband and running away together like fairy tale. Imagine his surprise when I showed up at his apartment this morning with all evidence of your affair. Imagine his surprise finding out your husband knew everything. That's when Sarah found her voice, though it came out as croak. What? What do you mean he knew everything? Oh, sweetie, your husband's been watching this whole thing unfold. Did you really think you could fool a private investigator? Did you really think those amateur social media posts wouldn't lead him straight to you? Sarah's face cycled through confusion, realization, and pure terror. She was understanding this wasn't random coincidence. This was orchestrated. This was planned. This was justice. That's when my process server materialized next to Sarah like beaming down from Starship Enterprise. Sarah Hayes, you've been served. Manila envelope appeared in Sarah's hands before she could process what was happening. Inside were divorce papers, restraining order, and detailed breakdown of exactly how much evidence I had of her affair. And that's when Sarah's legs gave out. She dropped to knees right there, in middle of Miami International Airport, designer shopping bags scattered around her like wreckage of carefully constructed lies, sobbing while strangers recorded her breakdown for posterity. Beautiful work, Tony's voice came through my earpiece. That was better than cable TV. I closed laptop and poured victory bourbon. Sarah had wanted to block me from her life for 5 days. Mission accomplished. She was about to be blocked from mine permanently. The beautiful thing about perfectly executed plan isn't just initial explosion. It's watching shockwaves ripple like nuclear fallout. While Sarah had her public breakdown, rest of my orchestrated demolition was getting started. First domino fell exactly 18 minutes later. My phone buzzed with text from Kevin Park. Stories live, website's already crashing from traffic. Your boy Marcus is about to have very bad day. Kevin's article was masterpiece. City developers' Miami getaway coincides with missing zoning hearing. Taxpayers foot bill for love triangle. The piece laid out Marcus's entire questionable City Hall relationship, complete with timeline showing his emergency business travel, perfectly coinciding with 3 municipal hearings where his presence was legally required. My phone rang. Marcus calling, panicked and angry. I know this was you, he said. Sarah told me about your airport stunt. How's Miami treating you, buddy? I kept voice cheerful. By the way, how's Rachel taking the news about your wellness retreat? Silence, then defeated tone. She's gone. Took all her stuff and left. Won't answer my calls. This isn't over, Marcus said, but his heart wasn't in it. Actually, Marcus, I think it is. You're staying away from Sarah, leaving Rachel alone, and praying city attorney doesn't decide making example out of you. But Marcus was just appetizer. Main course was Robert Mitchell. Catherine Mitchell had not only filed for divorce, but managed to freeze Robert's accounts, secure restraining order, and hire forensic accountant to trace every penny he'd spent on extracurricular activities. Catherine's divorce attorney called me. You just handed me cleanest divorce case I've seen in 20 years. Robert's already begging to settle out of court. She explained Robert was so panicked about financial exposure, he was throwing everyone under bus, giving full statement about how Jessica Martinez had approached him about funding Miami trip, complete with details about her services in exchange for his generosity. Within hours of article going live, Marcus's business partners were calling emergency meetings. His city contracts were being reviewed pending investigation. His development projects faced sudden permitting delays. Jessica's wealthy boyfriend had dumped her after Robert's lawyer shared some receipts. Amy was losing her job at dental office. Even Lisa's marriage was crumbling, as her husband questioned how she could afford expensive Miami hotels on teacher's salary. The ripple effects continued for weeks. Robert served 18 months in federal prison for embezzlement. His divorce from Catherine was finalized with extreme prejudice. She walked away with everything except his debt and shame. Jessica fled New York entirely, last spotted working as hostess at chain restaurant in Phoenix suburb. Her entire skill set revolved around manipulating wealthy men, and her reputation made her radioactive to that demographic. Marcus faced federal trial for corruption charges. His development empire collapsed faster than House of Cards and Hurricane, and his former business partners were cooperating with investigators to minimize their own sentences. Amy simply disappeared, faded away like she'd never existed. Last heard, she was living with her parents in Ohio, working at grocery store, telling people she'd taken break from her New York career to care for family. Lisa's marriage lasted exactly 3 months after Miami before her husband filed for divorce. He discovered that Lisa's involvement went deeper than innocent bystander. She'd known about Jessica's arrangement with Robert, helped coordinate cover story, and even provided alibis for some of Sarah's earlier meetings with Marcus. But the grand finale belonged to Sarah herself. My beautiful, clever wife, who thought she could outsmart professional investigator, had discovered that fairy tales don't usually involve federal investigations and public humiliation. She'd spent first month after Miami living with her parents, probably expecting I'd eventually cool down and we could work things out like adults. When my lawyer's cease and desist letter made clear that reconciliation wasn't on table, she'd tried contacting Marcus, only to discover he was busy with legal problems. Final blow came when she tried returning to work, only to find out her employer had decided having an employee whose affair made local news wasn't compatible with their corporate image. She'd been quietly let go during restructuring that somehow only affected her position. 3 months later, Sarah had moved into a one-bedroom apartment in part of town her former friends wouldn't be caught dead in, working as customer service representative for insurance companies specializing in high-risk policies. The letter arrived on Tuesday morning, delivered by my lawyer because Sarah was still legally prohibited from contacting me directly. It was handwritten on cheap corner store stationery, not the expensive kind she used to buy for thank you notes to people she wanted to impress. She admitted affair had been going on for months before Miami. She acknowledged she'd been lying to me, to herself, to everyone about what she really wanted. She even took responsibility for dragging her friends into her mess. "I know you'll never forgive me, and I understand why," she wrote. "What I did to you, to us, to everyone involved was unforgivable. But I want you to know that losing you is the worst consequence of all my terrible choices. I hope someday you can find happiness with someone who deserves you." I read it twice, then handed it to Rachel, who was sitting across from me at our usual coffee shop. We'd been meeting regularly for months now, and somewhere along the way, coffee had turned into dinner, and dinner had turned into something that felt suspiciously like relationship, though neither of us was brave enough to use that word yet. Rachel read the letter with same expression she probably used when grading disappointing homework assignments. "Well," she said finally, "at least she's self-aware now. That's something, I guess." "Too little, too late," I said, which was true. I believe Sarah was genuinely sorry. I even believed she'd learned something from spectacular destruction of her life. But believing someone is sorry and forgiving them are two entirely different things. "You know what's weird?" Rachel said. 6 months ago, I would have read this and felt sorry for her, thought she deserved second chance. Now I think some mistakes don't get second chances. Some bridges once burned stay burned forever. I looked at Rachel across the table, this woman who'd been collateral damage in someone else's midlife crisis and had somehow emerged stronger, smarter, and more beautiful than before, and realized I was looking at my second chance, not with Sarah, but with someone real, honest, and brave enough to build something new from ashes of someone else's betrayal. "What do you think happens now?" Rachel asked. "To all of them? Do they get their happy endings eventually?" I thought about it for a moment, watching pedestrians hurry past coffee shop window, all carrying their own secrets and lies and broken dreams. "I think they get exactly what they earned," I said finally. "Sarah gets to live with consequences of her choices. Marcus gets to face music for his crimes. Others get to figure out who they are when they can't hide behind other people's money and marriages. And us?" I reached across table and took Rachel's hand, noting how perfectly it fit in mine, how natural it felt to touch someone who didn't flinch away from darker parts of my personality. "I think we get to be honest," I said, "with each other, with ourselves, with the world. No games, no masks, no pretending to be people we're not." Rachel smiled, and it was kind of smile suggesting she was thinking same thing I was, that maybe, just maybe, we'd found something worth keeping in wreckage of our former lives. "I like honest," she said. "Me too." And for first time in years, that felt like enough.